welcome to this small informal panel between blockchain experts. We're here at Blockchain Zoo. We have here Barton. Barton is from the United States. We have David, also from the United States. And we have Raman from Belarus, and myself, which I'm Italian. We are in Bali, Indonesia, and we are happy to discuss a little bit about blockchain technology and how this new technology is going to evolve in the next few years. I have to say that one important thing is to make a big divide between the financial aspect of cryptocurrencies and the technology of blockchain, which has millions of other uses. In fact, for example, David has a company that does something that is completely different from finance and use blockchain to guarantee the functioning. You want to tell us about?
Sure. So a company that I founded with a co-founder a couple of years ago is called Indorse. We did digital diplomas on the blockchain with Polytechnic in Singapore. So that has to do with time stamping when a digital certificate is created, as well as using private public key pair systems to authenticate who created the certificate and allows authentication of whether or not the certificate is valid, whether or not the person who signed it is valid, has it been revoked, all those things that you would want to know when you go to check if somebody's actually gotten a certificate that they've claimed that they received.
Let me ask a very dumb question. So you save the actual picture of the certificate, or you save the data in a digital format?
Yeah, so in that case what we do is we take a hash of the certificate. So it becomes a PDF. That PDF then gets hashed, and then that hash gets put into a smart contract as a data entry within the blockchain information.
So when somebody finally finishes studying at his diploma, is going to even also be given like a QR code or something to?
Yeah, exactly. So they're given a QR code which they can then give to their potential employer. They're then able to either go to the website of the institution. If they don't trust that website for some reason, they can ultimately go directly to the blockchain and do a validation on the certificate itself. Because they'll have a copy of their certificate, you can rehash the certificate and validate whether or not that's authentic.
So there's going to be no more fake doctor practicing without an actual...
It's actually a really big problem, and we're constantly hearing about this problem over and over again, especially in Singapore. Recently there was a case of somebody claiming to be going to some university like Harvard and getting a teaching degree or working in Singapore as a teacher. And they've actually made it a $20,000 fine now if you do this, as well as criminal offense, because it just keeps happening over and over. So it's something that they definitely want to get rid of.
So, and today this is a very particular case, the fact that somebody can have a diploma issued in this way. Besides, maybe also all the past diploma can be digitalized in this format.
Yeah, that's a little bit trickier. Going back is always harder than just starting fresh.
Because then it becomes data entry problem. You need to prove whoever's actually signing onto the blockchain that it's legitimate, has the correct information, or is honest.
Hey, it will be a good moment to get a lot of certificates
that are
it's
like you can start grandfathering in people who are faking new ones.
Yeah. So I mean, that's always a big issue with any sort of information that's being put into the blockchain is authentication of the person signing the information. Are they who they say they are? Is the information that they're putting in correct? Because if you're not getting that correct information to start with, you're starting from a very bad.
Yeah, in fact, I was thinking what would be the difference between digitalizing in a normal database something or in the blockchain? Because in a normal database, I can still run a query to fix an error once the first entry has been done wrongly, while in the blockchain it's become an issue. It can be new information posted on top of the old one, but the old one is going to always be there.
Yeah, so with the blockchain, what you get is an audit trail that can't be corrupted, right? So if Roberto signs it initially, and then Barton is a subsequent administrator within the school, we know exactly who updated that record at every step.
It sounds so good that we wonder why it's now already deployed everywhere.
So, I mean, the big question with a lot of blockchain projects is who's the beneficiary and who's going to pay for that benefit? Right? So, university, they're a big beneficiary of this. However, the true beneficiary is the person employing them, right?
Okay, so how to charge them?
Who's going to get charged to do all this? That's actually a big problem.
What about regulation? So once the government get involved and make a law. For example, in Italy, starting this January 2019, every invoice a company makes is to be electronic.
Okay.
So it's registered instantly. Usually at the end of the year, people were collecting, exchanging invoices just to balance out. And now it's going to be impossible because every invoice is registered the moment that it's made, yet not on a blockchain, though it's registered on a centralized system.
What you're talking about is tax receipts.
That,
right.
Obviously makes sense.
Okay. Prevention of fraud and fake invoices.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
I see a movement toward digitalization of practical things because it's a convenience for the government, making easier also to cross-check, track, and tax people.
And it is a question, you know, in this. So if I'm an employer, for example, and I want to be able to validate these certificates. So in the kind of the blockchain mentality, I would deploy a node because my incentive is that I have this network at my disposal and that everybody can trust the network because it's operated in a decentralized way. If it's only one system that works like that, then I'm kind of trying to make this technical trade-off in my mind of, is it worth my time to like pay a technical person who can actually set up a node and maintain, you know, understand enough to keep it connected to the network just to have this kind of security? Or, you know, we might be looking at there might need to be a larger economy of scale in terms of the benefit that they get from.
Absolutely, and in fact, on this exact point, being a new technology, universities just start teaching these things in a very confused way. And Raman here made something incredible. He's been one of the pioneers in offering jobs ads specifically for this technology. How do you see this going? Like, where are more brains? Where are more recruiters around the world?
Right. Well, there are like a lot of companies out there that are hiring everywhere else. You know, all including you guys, right? So like both technical, non-technical talent. We're seeing quite a bit of kind of individuals who have this domain expertise. They will launch their own like courses that they will try to teach. But universities, they're trying to get on this track as well, but I'm not sure they're doing as good of a job as they should have.
In my mind, I saw this imbalance between where the brains that know blockchain are and where the recruited that want blockchain people are. And I don't think they're in the same place. And probably I wonder how the recruiters actually know what they want. But they're blindly searching blockchain people without even understanding the different kind of specialty that there are in these fields. How it is.
Right. I mean, recruiters, this usually goes with any tech space. They're not necessarily hands-on. They don't know what's the difference between different chains out there, between different technologies. There are sometimes exceptions, but just to generalize, they would just try to find the best fit for the company and like provide a few leads that you might be interested in as an employer, as a company, as a business owner. But obviously, they will not be able to figure out whether you're technically apt, what's the depth of your experience.
So yeah, another company that I helped co-found, Indorse. So we had a recruiter at a London, and I think they ran out of potential candidates.
Right.
So they've actually somewhat pivoted into education as well as recruitment.
Right.
Where the education part is basically what you consider a front-end product, and then the recruitment is the actual business money-making product for them, because there's just not enough talent. So they're creating their own pipeline of people to go into the companies that need this.
That model is getting like really popular with even more traditional tech, non-blockchain, but with blockchain as well. People will just set up those schools that will convert traditional engineers or web developers, mobile developers, etc., and they will give them a bit more technical knowledge in Ethereum space.
And I think this is a direct consequence of the fact that it's very kind of a complicated work. You know, it's there's a lot of technical concepts, and even you know, when you get into it, kind of like game theoretic concepts that go into how a blockchain really functions. There's just a lot of pieces to it, and it's so I think it's not at all surprising that the number of people who are prepared to do real technical work on blockchain is pretty small. It's because, you know, it's hard enough already if you're looking for like a cryptography expert, or if you're looking for a decentralized systems expert, or, you know, somebody who understands game theory well enough to understand the repercussions of, you know, the kind of proof of work mining, or you know, like how the fee incentive schemes play out and how fee markets work and things like that. And trying to put those people together into like one person who kind of comprehends how these have been fitted together into a system is it's challenging. And so I feel like in order to move forward, there does have to be some real training that happens.
Yeah, we need to go teach a decentralized system at the kindergarten level to then evolve at this kid with a culture that will know. I have a big feeling that all this, and notice there are no such new technology. The peer-to-peer was many years that was there. Cryptography was even starting with the computers, if not before, with as a weapon of war, as the United States recognizes, right? And only now they are surfacing, put together to offer this possibility of decentralized functionalities, which is a very interesting approach to deployment of technology compared to what we've been doing until now. In a way, I have this feeling that this is going to be a huge impact, much bigger than we can comprehend at the moment in the next future. Do you have any particular, going one by one, starting with Raman, view of how 10, 15, 20 years from now decentralized management of application content and daily life is going to impact the way that things go?
Right. Well, I'd probably focus on like one of the areas that particularly interests me is almost related to like diplomas and like identity verification. Is that today, if you're, for example, traveling around, right, and you're applying for different visas or trying to get any certificate out there validated by third party that's supposed to provide you some service or grant you some access, like that should be way more smoother than it is right now. Right now, you need to collect papers. For example, embassy would look at your papers, try to figure out whether they're legitimate or not. Look at just like regular stamps with blue ink, whether your bank account statements are actually legitimate or not, and it's still very easy to fake them. Instead of that, the process should be way smoother. Those entities can just look up whether your hashes are cryptographically secure and whether they've been validated correctly, and issue the document. And same thing with employers. Employers should be very easy for you to verify.
Or past employment or experience. Absolutely, that's very good.
So I've often said that a lot of these problems are not technical problems. It's people problems, right? So digital signing's been around for a while. We could digitally sign most of this stuff and pass it around, and no one does it, or a lot of people don't do it. Even something as silly as your bank statement. Like, why can't I just push a button on the bank website and have it generate a signed version of my bank statement that I can then present as a digital version of my proof of address?
Excellent example.
Right. None of that makes any sense, but it's the way it is, and
is illiteracy, basically. Is a question of illiteracy of the decision makers, because if they only knew how simple it is, because it's mathematics, so it's not that you need to buy a piece of hardware to plug somewhere. It's simple mathematics, and the problem is solved. Barton, how you see the future?
So I have kind of a grand vision, and I don't know if it's going to be blockchain specifically, but I think these kind of technologies in general. For me, and I think I'm aware of one example this has happened in. I think it might have been in Taiwan that they did this, but I'm looking for examples in larger countries is to say run a national election on a blockchain, or like a party I think because I come from the United States, and one of the problems that we have there very seriously is we're starting to move into electronic voting, but the counting, the account of like how those votes actually get, and think about the amount of pressure that actually comes into play, and if you could modify those votes, would you, So I think cryptographic technology, this kind of decentralized peer-to-peer approach to things, if we combine it with something like zero-knowledge proofs that still secures the anonymity of the people who are voting, could potentially because I think if you can't guarantee that the person who won was the person who got the most votes, then it's not really a democracy, It's so I think we could actually make sure that we are living in a democracy by doing that.
So it's actually funny. I first met Roberto when I gave a presentation on voting on a hackathon. I had done a very simple script using counterparty assets on the Bitcoin blockchain and presented it at the Bitcoin conference in 2015, I think, in Singapore. And Roberto was sitting in the front row, raising his hand and saying, "We've already solved this with NXT."
Correct. Which has voting inside.
So the big problem with that is scale, right?
Yeah, precisely.
And blockchains are, public blockchains anyway are not great at scaling yet, unless you have some sort of...
Precisely.
Which reminds me, the definition of internet is a network of networks.
Yeah.
So there will be the interchain. There is a blockchain of blockchains, probably. Who knows if that's the direction to go for scaling. And, we have friends, Toby, which is studying with Paul this network commit protocol, with this network protocol to connect different blockchain. And I think that's one of those path where the future actually.
So you're talking about
lies.
special use case blockchains, for example, a blockchain specifically built for voting, one specifically
And that you
built for value
you
transfer.
can bridge around. Obviously, they start with the financial aspect, one, and you have exchange point. But why not? There could be like a large communication.
But I think in the more general standpoint, I'm glad you brought up the scale problem, because in my view, the biggest thing that's prevented a wider adoption of the technology so far is that there are lots of the biggest electronic businesses that we use anticipate that they can scale linearly. You just add computers and then you can increase the throughput of the system. And blockchain as a particular architecture, I think struggles with that. But now there are, I think, cryptographic architectures that are similar that can create the same guarantees, which are either not necessarily blockchains, or they use some kind of fractal scaling like this, like a network of networks approach. But I think the scaling problem is still the big thing that everybody's trying to solve. Once we really have a good approach to scaling that indefinitely, then I think there's going to be a real explosion of this technology.
Let's not forget that if we want to do an analogy with internet, we are at the days of dial-up, American Online, or other provider that were there. They were super slow, and reading an email was taking a long time. And it seemed so exciting at the time, as it seems so exciting now.
Right.
I'm sure 10 years from now, this will be just a laughable conversation, given the solution that will be implemented and presented. But it's thanks to people like us, probably, and the people that we can bring in and bring to help, that the future is going to move ahead. Well, I would like to thank you all for this chat, Raman, David, and Barton, and myself, and Roberto Capodici, and to the next opportunity to have a chat together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.